cinephiles, to episode 1 of From the Depths, where the depth and possibilities of the horror genre are examined and celebrated, one film at a time. I'm Kelsey Zukowski. I'm a writer, performer, and lifelong horror fan. I had a lot of fun talking horror with Dino last year on the Late Late Horror Show. Thank you for those of you who tuned in and listened to our chats and insights on horror. And thank you to Dino for continuing to allow me to be a part of this channel that really honors the macabre and the haunting. So let's dive into those treacherous waters of coming-of-age horror. I'd like to talk about the 2022 film, Hatching. It's a Finnish film written and directed by Hannah Bergholm, and it premiered at this past year's Sundance Film Festival. It's brought on by IFC Midnight and currently streaming, available to rent and buy. I watched it on Amazon. There's a few different options. So it follows a 12-year-old girl named Tina who's kind of being pressured to become a competitive gymnast by her narcissistic, image-obsessed mother, who happens to be a blogger. So everything in her life, and thus Tina's life, must be this picture-perfect image of kind of family, you know, suburban bliss, and just this lovely, wonderful life and the wonderful accomplishments that they all have. So as things escalate and Tina is feeling these pressures and just the lack of permission to be herself, to be a kid, to find her own path and identity, she finds this mysterious egg in the forest by her house, and she decides to take it in and care for it and nurture it as it was her own. And from there, nothing bad happens at all, because, you know, why would it with a mysterious egg? So as it hatches, it becomes this bird-like monster, and but because it Tina has shown this care and this nurture, it has created a bond and a certain understanding, sort of clung on to her spirit as if it's her spirit animal or her protector. As things goes on and she starts to feel more pressures and feeling threatened, essentially it grows more and more into her likeness. At first it seems more just like this kind of monstrous pet, you know, that she has taken on and has hidden in secret. But as it goes on, it really becomes her doppelganger, and even connected in a part of her. If one of them gets hurt, the other gets hurt. So it kind of becomes this other side, this other part of her. And in a lot of ways, it becomes her defender. It is very much a creature that acts on base instincts. It stands up for her emotions and her thoughts and her sort of right to be herself that the, you know, normal human-looking Tina is denied of. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of connection with the monster, yet she's still terrorized, and in her way it's still a primal, grisly being that just totally uproots her life and makes her grow continuously more guilty and responsible as bloodshed is unleashed around her in the name of her own protection and her own good. So it's a mix. It's definitely a dramatic film at its core, with a lot of monster elements. The monster work, the creature work and puppetry is absolutely phenomenal. There's a lot of kind of grotesque, yet oddly beautiful kind of shots that we see, and just the portrayal of the monster itself. It's definitely something that I think will pique the interest of horror fans. It's very primal and gritty, and just kind of takes on this life of its own. And as it goes on, you know, it's kind of a mixture of bird-like, but then also looking like the doppelganger of this young, seemingly more innocent, you know, young girl. So it's an interesting mix, and that the monster itself and just kind of where the story goes and digging into elements of folk horror really kind of make it feel like this macabre, ugly duckling, so to speak. And there are a lot of similar elements to that, as Tina feels very, you know, left out. No one can really understand. She can't really open up to anyone. Even before this happened, and she had this massive secret of this monster that was one with her, and she, you know, felt equally horrified of and one with and protective over in return. Even before that, she was very much isolated thanks to her mother, who just made anyone her enemy, and everyone is your competition, and you need to be focused. So because of her mother, like, she really wasn't given permission to be a kid or be herself. So she is a bit ostracized from her peers. So yeah, like, there's definitely an element of the ugly duckling here in a Gothic fairy tale coming of age horror sort of way, which is amazing in itself. And visually, it's very well done. Earlier on, it's a lot of kind of bright, you know, this image of perfection, and very much like suburbia, and even it's very brightly lit and beautifully shot, but it's even details down to, I would say, like the wallpaper. There's floral, there's just bright, colorful, sort of innocent and flourishing wallpaper, like everywhere you look in their home. And that, you know, kind of ties into the mother's image and what she wants them to be, and the expectation, and sort of kind of also represents, you know, the more innocent kind or ideal version of Tina, and what the expectations are. And on the topic of expectations, it also kind of dives in a lot to expectations of girls and women in society. At points, the mother is very unlikable, but at points, you know, she kind of comments that, oh, I always did some, you know, things because everyone else thought that I should, you know. It's very, she speaks to kind of, for a long time, feeling the role of women was just kind of do things for others. And she, who is a very selfish, narcissistic character, kind of has some very inappropriate talks with her daughter, and, you know, and kind of then is doing the same thing to her daughter, which is very hypocritical. If she feels like, you know, her whole life she had to be what everyone else, you know, do things for others and be what society thought you know, you were supposed to be, she is very, very much guilty of doing much worse to her daughter by not even the pressure, but it's like not even there's just no shred of empathy or understanding or listening to her thoughts or feelings or wants or anything at all. It's like her daughter is just this, you know, puppet molded to be her second chance at the things that she didn't do in her life, and that is all her daughter is. She's not her own person. In her eyes, like, it is just a reflection of her and her chance to, you know, continue this perfect image, and, you know, maybe the chances that she missed out, we don't really get to see her past, or why she is this way, or if she missed out on chances and now she's desperate to, you know, make her daughter succeed in ways that she didn't. But yeah, it really, a lot of the film is focused on the terror of pressures and expectations, and just not having the permission or freedom to have your own identity and self, and to be heard and listened to and valid. And it does that very well. Again, back to the visuals, as things escalate and she starts to kind of go more towards this discovery and find a creature that might understand her, even in a dark antagonistic way that she's not fully ready to embrace or accept, but still kind of challenges her. Beautiful, just kind of Gothic, ethereal, dreary, equally horrifying and eerie, and there's something, you know, fantastical and enigmatic about it. So yes, visually very beautiful, and it's just a film that's very full of metaphors and nuances, allegory, and just hidden meanings and layers everywhere, which I very, very much appreciate with any storytelling, any art form, but I especially love that in horror, to use the genre to really just show depth and possibilities. I think this can be true of just about any type of storytelling or art form, but I think one thing I really love about horror is that it's so full of metaphors, and the nature of it is to kind of dig into, you know, sort of the best and the worst of humanity, and our fears, and your thirst for life, and your hunger, and being able to withstand and endure and fight in ways that you never think that you could once you're in that moment. And it also, you know, can show, can be a metaphor of, you know, things in our everyday life that maybe aren't that extreme, or that life and death, but are still very relatable, and kind of communicate and articulate kind of the human condition, you know, the struggles of it and the beauty of it, in ways that it kind of pushes to show that power and that connection that is possible. So I do love, you know, when horror is really just drenched with metaphors and meaning, and just can relate to, you know, something about humanity and the struggle of it, and sometimes, you know, being alone and isolated and misunderstood, and especially in something like coming of age horror and dysfunctional family horror. You definitely get that a lot in this film, more than, I would say almost more than anything. It did a really good job of showing depth and layers just everywhere you look. From the beginning, a lot of this starts from kind of the different approaches of, you know, how the mother is, and even though she's kind of made to be in the image of her, who at her core Tina is, and who she wants to be, and who is hiding within her. So it kind of digs into nature versus nurture a bit, with early on, Tina's mother, who, by the way, is only listed as capital M mother. No name is ever mentioned, and same thing with her father. So that in itself, you know, is kind of a statement that she, you know, isn't, almost like she isn't a person outside of that she's very, just this authority figure to her, and very domineering, and not having much empathy or humanity or layers as more than that. So yes, so with the nature versus nurture, there's early on an instance where Tinya's mother sees a crow who is flying into the house and instantly kills it. Not really a bloodthirsty or vengeful or cold, vicious serial killer type, killing an animal sort of a thing, but it's just, that was an annoyance to my life. It didn't serve my perfect image. It's dead. I feel nothing. Moving on. And Tinya kind of takes the exact opposite approach. She, she stumbles upon this mysterious egg, but still she goes out she's kind of looking for something in a way, a way back to herself, for someone to understand her, from an escape from everything that she's dealing with in her everyday life. And she finds it, and she, no idea even what it is or what it'll look like or who it'll be, but she nurtures and cares for it and is very protective of even keeping it a secret and keeping it her own. So again, it's the, really nurturing it, and then in a way then facing her own nature slowly. And then, of course, as it comes out and it's this bird-like monster, seemingly coming from this crow that we see, killed in the beginning, or at least, there's definitely a relation and a correlation there. And it even being a crow is significant and shows a lot of those meanings and sort of foreshadowings and nuances that I mentioned. So even being a crow, crows can mean a lot of things, from, culturally to as, spirit animals. They can just show like sort of a kindred spirit animal with people, but they can also, mean mischief is coming, death is coming. It can be an omen, for a lot of things, but it can also kind of represent, uniqueness and kind of beating to your own path, beating to your own drum. And a big part of what the significance really is here is a sign of transformation, which crows can be, and which is essentially the journey that Tinya is going on through forming this doppelganger. And it explores that really well, and it is, it's still a monster. She's at times terrorized by it. There's people dying because of her, because it's reacting off her base instincts. It's, just a very much an instinctual monster who's standing up for her in a way that she hasn't even processed that she should, not saying she should stand up for herself by, going through these violent means, but in a way it's, it's her intuition and her emotion and her protection and the parts of herself that she's not allowing to even fathom or let exist, because she's been so conditioned to only adhere to this standard, and you must be like this, you must be better, you can do better, why aren't you doing better? So she hasn't even allowed herself some of these thoughts that this monster who is connected with her just fiercely fights for. So there's a lot of times where this monster who she at once cared for and feels a connection with, she's just utterly terrorized by, because her whole life, has become uprooted, and she knows, as the omen can say, death follows her now. Again, it attacks those who threaten her, or, you know, kind of could be not fully accepting her, digging into, you know, acknowledging her emotions. But it's not always the choice that Tina would make. So it becomes something that is kind of haunting her, and she wants to get rid of at some point. But then also, it's also this representation of kind of who she's been hiding and not letting be, and also who she could become. It's kind of, it definitely digs into kind of these thoughts of, you know, when you're kind of one person through maybe childhood, when you have this certain innocence, and at some point, as you slowly, you know, bridge towards adulthood, or here even just adolescence, you have to open up to who you could become, for better or worse. And for the most part, I feel like the monster is viewed, you know, it's a monster, but it's still, there's a certain beauty and freeing quality to it. Like, it just very much, it is without expectations or control. It is its wild creature, and it'll be who it will be. Another really important aspect of this movie is, as it comes, you know, no spoilers, I won't mention what it is, but as the film progresses and it, you know, comes towards the end, it really serves as a strong cautionary tale of how damaging kind of those expectations and doubts can be, and how harmful, I would say, non-loving parents and home life is. You know, there's the nature versus nurture aspect with the bird, but it's almost, it shows it as well in how the mother raises her daughter and her family. She's essentially like a sociopath who's narcissistic and only cares about her own image and what her family reflects upon her. And in a lot of ways, it really shows the emotional and even psychological abuse that she is bringing down upon her daughter. Maybe not even intentionally. In a lot of ways, she seems just totally oblivious to it, and the father is pretty much the same. He's not shown as non-caring. He's there, you know, he's there in the house physically, but there's like a moment where Tina comes to him when she's so lost and desperate, and she almost doesn't know how to say, you know, what's going on, but she's there, and just looking at him, you could tell she's searching, desperate for a lifeline. And the father just kind of checks out and says, okay, I'm gonna go back to, you know, what I'm doing. So it kind of shows two very different but harmful ways of parenting, I suppose. One who's just so controlling and so involved, but just not aware and not caring about the individual and their feelings and wants. And the other is just kind of there but not really there, saying, you know, just follow what your mother wants. She knows what's best. She, you know, she means well, all that, and not really either of them really caring to listen or see their daughter. And that kind of creates this monster and kind of pushes her to be this part of herself that has been attempted to be contained, but is sort of inevitable as she must go through this growth and transformation. So it is in a lot of ways, it is a very meaningful film. I will say it had, the body horror element isn't quite what I expected. It's a little less focused on the girl herself. It's more this bird, you know, becomes monster, becomes doppelganger. It's more happening to that creature. So it's a creature that she finds kinship with, and, you know, becomes connected with her, and almost like her other half in a way. But it isn't quite the traditional, you know, body degrading and becoming this other kind of vicious, unknown, but powerful wild monster that you kind of get with a lot of body horror, especially with it being something with a 12-year-old girl and feeling the pressures of, you know, not being able to be a kid and being treated way beyond her years, but also not being given permission to be her own person and her own identity, which is a really kind of horrifying mixture of the two. Yeah, so you would almost, there are like some blood sort of motif moments, even a lot of, not all of it, but there's a strong portion of the film where it's her and the monster in her room, because that's kind of where she hides it at night. It's kind of her secret that she tries to protect and keep from the world, from her own sake and for the monster's sake. So you see kind of like splashes of blood on the bed, and at one point, you know, her father's like, "What's going on with you?" and sees the blood and is like, "Oh, she's going through this, you know, stage of puberty," it's sort of a thing. So it's very hinted at. Not like I want, you know, need like a big focus on that, but it is a part of, you know, a girl or anyone going through that stage of their life, where it can be very confusing, and you know, their bodies changing and morphing and transitioning. So that does offer a strong potential for body horror. You can do a lot with that, and this film didn't really choose to go that route so much. It was more, again, finding this creature become monster, become doppelganger, and as you look more into it, you see this isn't just a monster protecting her, this is part of her in a way. So it was more through kinship with the monster, which I love. I am all about, especially someone who's misunderstood, you know, finding understanding and permission to be themselves, even if it's, you know, the ugly, dark, you know, parts of them that aren't accepted by polite society, or, you know, aren't what, you know, might look good to her mother and what the image she wants to portray to the world. So I love that it was a story that kind of dug into, you know, finding friendship and understanding and yourself through a monster. That's beautiful. I love that. I did expect for it to be more of a personal, you know, the human girl of Tinya, kind of, that having an element of body horror, which we didn't get as much. But again, it's a little bit of a different story and a different take, and the story that they told is so strong and so well done and so nuanced and meaningful. But just so, you know, horror fans are aware of, it's not as graphic or gory that you would normally get when you think body horror. There are some gruesome, beautiful monster moments, and there are some attacks and kill and blood. I'll say it's not a super gory film. A lot of the attacks, you don't necessarily see them happening. It's kind of like the attack and the aftermath. There are a few moments where you kind of see her losing herself and it happening in the moment, but it's few and far between. So it's, I would say at its core, it's more about the drama of the situation and the story and kind of the coming of age journey. And I think making a point of how important it is to really see your children and let them be their own unique humans, not just the carbon copy or the image or, you know, the person that you wanted to be as a, you know, in your youth that you never got to be. Because it can be so harmful and damaging, and, you know, kind of stay with kids and who they become if it's, you know, with this unfeeling expectations of who they're supposed to be. So I think that's really what focus on more than anything, kind of the warning of how damaging that can be and what it can maybe push someone to, and just the importance of finding understanding and being able to be yourself and feel what you feel and be who you want to be. So if that's the main focus for a horror film, I think that's awesome, and this film did it so well. It was very unique. It was so full of heart and emotion. A huge part of what kept me, you know, alongside the intrigue and just the visual, kind of nightmarish, ethereal, unique storytelling that was happening, was the main girl, Tina, played by Sira Salulina. She was just incredible, and she really showed a lot of great emotion, but kind of also a lot of moments where you kind of see she's holding back and almost doesn't know how to have these thoughts and emotions in turmoil because she's just so conditioned against it. So she had a lot of really good, subtle, complex, even just facial features where you could really see and feel kind of the war that was going on within her, even outside of this actual monster haunting her and kind of tearing apart her world as she knew it, yet also was giving her the power and the rights and the worth to be herself. So yeah, there's again, I would say it's dramatic focus, but with a lot of Gothic horror elements. Again, really great puppetry. The monster moments are just exquisite. So many just primal, vicious, I don't know, but still kind of emotional and beautiful where you're kind of cheering for it. Just a lot of great strength and truth and rawness to those moments. So I think there are elements that horror fans will, you know, really respond to, but it is definitely a more dramatic, personal, metaphorical story that's meant to relate to a difficult moment for a lot of people in their lives, and a reminder, I think, even for adults, of how important these things are to hold on to and to give yourself the time and discovery and to acknowledge and stand up for, you know, your feelings and your thoughts and your identity and worth and all of it, really, and as well as the importance of not to define others, whether your children or anyone else, and to just, you know, be kind of a more accepting society and let people be who they are, which I think, again, pretty great for a horror film to achieve all that. So definitely, I just want to give you guys like a good idea of what to expect. Overall, there was a few things that I thought, oh, I would have expected a little more of this, or they could have done this a little more. Another one was I did like how they, you know, handled and touched upon some of like the kind of societal expectations and roles of women. I think they could have gone a little farther than that. It was just kind of a few mentions when it seemed like it was kind of a big part of everything that was happening. So that, again, I expected a little more like body horror transformation, where we're physically seeing the body kind of rot away and become something else. But they took a different approach, which was amazing and phenomenal in its own way. So there's a few different elements, again, that I would have, I think if it would have been this way, that might have like really, you know, pushed it to that next level for me and been a film that really connected to me and just kind of overwhelmed me in a wonderful way of all the things that I love. But I also am very okay with the approach that they took and that they were telling a different story. So overall, I think a few things, you know, maybe could have been slightly stronger for me, or could have been expanded upon or explored deeper, which is a lot of times I always want deeper exploration. But there's so much that they did really well, and I can admire the story that they told and just how deep and layered and complex and meaningful and relevant and poetic it all was. So can't say much more than that. Definitely a very unique film. I think it's a horror film that's an important story that's very well told and very layered. So my recommendation is to check it out. I would give this film 4 out of 5 creatures from the depths, which is gonna be my rating system here. So yeah, definitely check it out. Come back here and let me know your thoughts. You know, bring up anything that comes to mind with the film. I'd love to continue this discussion, and for overall for this, you know, channel to be, and this show on the channel to be an opportunity to talk horror with fellow horror fans or newcomers to the genre. So let me know your thoughts and let's continue the discussion going. And definitely let me know if there's any films that ever come up that you guys would like me to touch upon, whether it be, you know, favorite classics, or especially I love covering indie, under the radar, or you know, films that kind of just maybe missed their audience, or you know, didn't get as much attention that perhaps they deserve. So let me know. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned for our next feature, which will be Goth Book Club. Until then, thanks guys again, and stay creepy.